Number 10. Scrabble. Though it may seem like Scrabble can only be won if you have the largest vocabulary, there's a strategy that shows quite the opposite. In fact, you'll want to play against someone with a sizable vocabulary of larger words. You, on the other hand, should brush up on shorter words. You see, short words don't leave much room to be built on, especially if you find a way to block expansion with strategically placed small words. When your opponent plays a longer word, simply build off of it while finding ways to block the board and prevent the use of double and triple letter scores. Number 9. Tic-tac-toe. Tired of always losing at tic-tac-toe? Then you need to print out these maps of optimal moves, study them, and just when you think you've memorized every move, study them some more. There's no participation trophy for tic-tac-toe, so you need to be in it for the big W. Those somewhat complicated-looking maps represent the move you want to make depending on where your opponent moves. The red symbol represents the move you'll want to make depending on which space your competitor occupies during their move. Number 8. Guess Who? To best your opponent in a tense game of Guess Who, you'll want to start by asking one question. Does the name start with a letter from A to G? This should have the number of choices, a number which you can diminish even more by asking their gender in the same question. Mark Rober covered this game wonderfully in his video titled Best Guess Who Strategy, 96% Win Record Using Math, where he mathematically breaks down your best odds of winning and introduces a strategy of coupling multiple questions together while not breaking any rules. Number 7. Battleship. You can thank the president of Data Genetics, Nick Berry, for what is about to be your lucrative battleship career. According to Berry, the key to dominating the deep blue is envisioning it like it's a checkerboard. When you make a guess, do so on what would be a color square, and if it's a miss, leave a space between your prior guess and your next one. Should you still be having difficulties, use Alex Alamy's graph, which shows probabilities of scoring a hit based on the location on the board. Number 6. Chess. Chess is a lot easier to win if you're playing against someone of amateur skill level. If they don't know what you're trying to pull off, you can finish the game in 2 moves with the Fool's Mate or 4 moves with the Scholar's Mate. For Fool's Mate, all you need is for your opponent to move the pawn from in front of their kings, bishop, and knight. With them out of the way, your queen can quickly take the game. Scholar's Mate is a little more complicated, requiring use of the bishop and queen. There's also Fromm's Gambit, Bird's Opening, and Legal Trap, which can really throw your opponent for a loop. Number 5. Jenga. Jenga is a game of steady hands and balance, but there are a few tricks that can decimate your opponent. When it comes to removing blocks, you'll want to push them rather than pull. You probably already knew this one, but always take from the center when you can and try to force your opponent to pull from the sides. Whenever you take a block from a side of the tower, replace it on the opposite side. You may find that some blocks slightly vary in size, so try to find the thinner blocks as they won't be bearing the tower's weight. Number 4. Clue. There's really no shortcut to winning Clue, but there's a tactic you should use to better deduce the who, what, and where that's needed to win. Whenever a player shows off a card in their hand, you're expected to jot down that the item isn't in the center envelope. What the game doesn't suggest is also noting who has that card and making note of when a player has none of the cards. This ultimately will help you deduce which cards are in play and which you should be guessing. Number 3. Connect 4. There's a way to win at Connect 4 100% of the time. And while that won't make you much fun to play with, it does feel good. You'll need to go first and place your disc in the middle slot for this to work. But when you do, it's a guaranteed win. The Department of Mathematics and Computer Science at Vrije Universiteit in the Netherlands wrote up an entire explanation, but it's quite a bit to get into. Winning could take 41 moves out of more than 4 trillion possible configurations, but could take longer depending on the opponent. Here, we have just one possible win, with another here. Number 2. Risk. Global domination is almost a guarantee if you follow these tips to rule the world. We're talking about Risk. You know that, right? Not the actual world. Anyway, since winning a battle in Risk is dependent on the roll of a die, how you play is really what matters. Much like in the real world of diplomacy, you can either play aggressively or bully others into doing your dirty work. As an aggressive player, you'll want to stack your armies so that they're double the number of attacking forces than there are defending. Playing aggressively is all about stomping across the map. As a manipulator, you want to find a player that's weaker than you and then cut a deal with them. You won't demolish their armies if they help you cut down on other opponents across the map. Finally, use Australia as a bargaining chip. It's easy to take over and doesn't offer much, but if you make it sound like a great deal, you can dupe other players into thinking it's a great deal. Number 1. Monopoly. It's the game that ruins friendships and families, and with this strategy, you can be at the core of the issue. Now, you may think you'll want to buy as many properties as possible and stock them with hotels. Au contraire. According to a heat map that shows frequently landed spaces, you'll want to focus on purchasing properties after the jail square. When you've monopolized that stretch of the board, build 3 houses per property. Though hotels provide a better return, houses are actually limited, and once the last house is placed, according to the game's rules, no more can be purchased. This will leave your opponents scrambling as they inevitably land on your monopoly.